All right, so let's get into some Iran and Israel shit because we got a lot going on with Iran right now. So, all right, I'm making decent time, I guess. So this is from Drop Site News. Oh, this is an Epstein story, actually. So the Israeli government apparently installed and maintained security systems at Epstein's apartment. You know, the one that Ehud Barak frequently visited like 100 times, basically lived in. It was at Epstein's apartment. So this from Drop Site. Drop Site's been doing killer work on the Epstein's Files stuff. All right, so I'll just read it's not too long, so I'll just read the whole thing here. So the Israeli government the Israeli government installed security equipment at a controlled access and controlled access to a Manhattan apartment building managed by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, according to a set of emails recently released in by the Department of Justice. The equipment was installed starting in early 2016 at 301 East 66th Street. The residence where former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak frequently stayed for stretches at a time. The security operation at Ehud's apartment was in place for at least 2 years. Emails from the DOJ disclosure show, with officials from the Israeli permanent mission to the United Nations corresponding regularly with Epstein's staff regarding security. The apartment was technically owned by a company connected to Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, but was effectively controlled by Jeffrey Epstein. Units in the building were frequently loaned out to Epstein's contacts and used used to house underage models, is what they claim here. Now, I'm sure Michael Tracy is blowing a gasket over that. If you aren't familiar, Michael Tracy has been bending over backwards to defend everything Epstein, and it's super suspicious. Rafi Shlomo, then director of the protective services at the Israeli mission to the United Nations in New York and head of Barak's security, corresponded with Epstein employees to arrange meetings to discuss security and coordinate installations of specialized surveillance equipment at the 66th Street residence. Shlomo personally controlled access to the apartment for guests and even conducted background checks on cleaners and Epstein's employees. Under Israeli law, former prime ministers and other high-ranking officials typically receive security services after they leave office, according to the emails. Epstein personally approved the installation of the equipment and authorized meetings between his staff and Israeli security officials. He totally wasn't connected to Israeli intelligence, though, you guys. Just ignore this. Ehud Barak and the Israeli mission to the United Nations did not respond to requests for comment. At the time of Epstein's death in 2019, Barak downplayed his connection to the disgraced financier, stating that while he met with Epstein several times, he didn't support me or pay me. Prime Minister, even though that leaked audio between Epstein and Ehud Barak just leaked, where Epstein recorded himself talking to Ehud Barak about how Ehud Barak could leverage his connections that he obtained over, his career in office as the prime minister and as the defense minister for Israel, how he could leverage those connections and people that owe him favors in order to secure financial security after he leaves office. And one of those people that he brought up was Peter Thiel with Palantir, and he didn't know how to spell Peter Thiel's name or Palantir's name. And this is way back in like 2006 or some shit like that. I can't remember the exact date. But this is when Palantir was still very early on. Palantir, the organization that started by the CIA under the name Total Information Awareness, and then they got busted for doing shit they weren't supposed to do. So they're like, okay, we're going to privatize this, give it to Peter Thiel. He can make a company called Palantir, and they'll essentially do the same thing. Yeah, Epstein was telling Ehud Barak how he could leverage Peter Thiel and Palantir to give him to maybe sit on the board of Palantir and pay him millions of dollars for essentially doing nothing or keeping his mouth shut. Yeah, that's the relationship that Ehud Barak and Jeffrey Epstein had. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently suggested that Epstein's close ties to Barak, a longtime Labour Party official and rival of Netanyahu, undermine rather than strengthen the case that for Epstein's ties to Israel. Like, oh no, he was connected to the leftist side of the Israeli government, so he clearly wasn't an Israeli, asset. Jeffrey Epstein's unusually close relationship with Ehud Barak doesn't suggest Epstein worked for Israel. It proves the opposite, Netanyahu said. Stuck in his election loss Stuck on his election loss from over 2 decades ago, Barack has for years obsessively attempted to undermine Israeli democracy by working with anti-Zionist, radical left, and failed attempts to overthrow the elected Israeli government, is what Benjamin Netanyahu said. A January 2016 email exchange between Barack's wife, Nili Priel, an Epstein employee, whose name is partially redacted but appears from other communications to be his longtime assistant, Leslie Groff, discussed installing alarms and surveillance equipment at the residence, including 6 sensors sticked to the windows, not stuck to the windows, and the ability to remotely access and ability to remotely control access to the premises. Priel informed Epstein's staff that they can neutralize the system from far before you need somebody to enter the apartment. There's typos all over the place in this. Non-capital, sorry. The only thing to do is call Rafi from the consulate and let him know who and when is entering. The correspondence also indicated that work done by the Israeli government was significant enough that it required Epstein to personally approve it. Jeffrey says he does not mind holes in the walls, and this is all just fine. Groff wrote to Barack and Priel. That means they had to run wires. That's why they had to put holes in the walls. Okay, and this is the email correspondence between them. I'm not going to read that. The mission was in regular touch with Epstein's representatives or multiple visits by Barack and his wife throughout 2016 and 2017. In January of 2017, email to Shlomo with the subject line, Jeffrey Epstein re-Ehud Barak's apartment. And that's the title of that's the email header. Jeffrey Epstein re-Ehud Barak's apartment. An Epstein assistant provided Israeli officials with a list of employees who would need access to the apartment, adding, I understand from you already have a copy of the ID from a while ago. She is the maid and has been going in and out of the apartment for a long time now. A few weeks later, they wrote to Epstein himself that Rafi, the head of Ehud Barak Security, is asking if I could meet him at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, the 14th, at his office, 800 2nd Avenue and 42nd, re-Ehud's apartment. Epstein approved the meetings. The correspondence continued throughout that year. In August, an assistant for Epstein reached out to Shlomo to inform him yet another stay by Barack and his wife at the Epstein residence. By November 2017, Shlomo had been replaced by another Israeli official who managed security and surveillance for Barack. Barack's longtime aide, Yoni Koren, who died in 2023, was another frequent guest at Epstein's 66th Street apartment. Koren stayed at the apartment on multiple occasions, including in 2013, while he was still actively serving as bureau chief for the Israeli Ministry of Defense. According to calendars released by the House Oversight Committee investigation into Epstein and emails released by the Distribution Denial of Secrets. Email correspondence with Barack's inbox also showed Koren exchanging information with Epstein for a wire transfer, as previously reported by DropSite. New emails released by the Department of Justice showed that Koren continued to stay at Epstein's apartment while receiving medical treatment in New York up until the second arrest and death of the financier in 2019. So yeah, there's that. So yeah, nothing to see here in the Epstein files, though, you guys. Nothing to see here. Okay, let's keep going here. So Sagar Enjeti points out what he thinks everybody is missing with the whole Epstein files situation. He was on Andrew Schultz's podcast, the Flagrant podcast, and they asked him, like, what's the biggest thing that you're seeing in the Epstein files that people seem to be missing here?
So in all of the Epstein files, what is the craziest email that you feel like everybody missed?
The most interesting email is this connection of the House of Rothschild to Jeffrey Epstein. Edmond de Rothschild, at the time, was facing a problem with the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice was alleging that Edmond de Rothschild, the bank in Switzerland, was helping wealthy Americans dodge taxes. So what they decide is that they'll pay a fine. Now, to negotiate that settlement, they hire 2 individuals, Kathy Rumler and Jeffrey Epstein. He says,
so why would you hire Jeffrey Epstein? Why wouldn't you hire a law firm?
I think he will find 45.5 penalty. That's 45.5 million. Legal, 10 million for legal fees to Kathy. Me, 25. All less than 80. Pretty good. They paid $45.5 million to the Department of Justice. Epstein was paid $25 million to broker that deal. The reason why this puts it all together for me is you have the Rothschilds negotiating with the American Justice Department. Who do you hire? There are 10 law firms which you hire. You don't hire Jeffrey Epstein unless you're hiring him for a reason.
So that's like the big mystery here. What was Epstein's job? What was he doing? Why did he have so many of these connections? And I'm no Epstein expert, but I did read One Nation Under Blackmail twice, volume 1 and 2. I follow all of Whitney Webb's stuff, and I listen to a lot of Ryan Dawson's stuff, who ironically they don't like each other. And Daryl Cooper also did a really extensive Epstein special that's like 3 episodes long on his Martyr Made podcast. And I mean, it's just such a freaking rabbit hole, and it ties into everything. And it was recently noticed that the years leading up to and the years after 9/11, all of those files have disappeared, apparently. All the dates surrounding 9/11 aren't available for release. And the government said, we're not releasing. We released 3 million files. Apparently there's another 3.5 million files that they just said, no, we're done. We're not releasing any more of it. And yeah, they're hoping this is all just going to go away. And hey, go figure. We got aliens now, you guys. And oh, there's a war popping off with Iran. So interesting timing, right?